Welcome to the Stop Ruining My Childhood podcast.
A sometimes nostalgic, sometimes cynical look back at pop culture.
Join us as we revisit movies, cartoons, and live-action TV of the 80s and 90s and ask the question...
Does this hold up, or did I just ruin my childhood?
My name is Megan.
And I'm Steve.
And today we are reviewing Salute Your Shorts. I keep almost calling it Camp Anawana. Because that's the theme song.
You would be close. That's the name of the camp.
Yeah. Salute Your Shorts, which was a Nickelodeon live-action TV show that ran in the summers and then later on for several years, kind of in syndication, but more like just reruns. Mm-hmm. And you can find that on the Paramount Network. So you can go just to the Paramount Network, or you can do what we did, which is get it through Prime.
Yes.
And actually only... I think 11 or 12 episodes are on there right now. The show had a total of 26. So I don't know if maybe you can find bootleg versions probably on YouTube.
Yeah. Maybe you can find both seasons complete. But it seems like it's select shows that are on.
But you may also want to wait till our full review to find out if you want to bother doing
That's
that.
True.
To be honest with you guys. So that's what we've got. And then our next episode, we're in the middle of our cycle right now. We do a cartoon and then a live action TV and then a movie. And our movie is also camp themed, and that is Camp Nowhere. So that is what's coming up later. But for now...
But first... our non-sponsored snack review.
Okay, really? This time it is completely non-sponsored because I had to make it.
Yes.
And describe what's in front of you right now, Steve.
So it is a bucket used for playing on the beach.
Or in
dirt, I guess. And it is got a little shovel attached to it. And inside it is some kind of concoction of Oreo cookies and pudding.
Yeah, and so here, I've been wanting to do this for a while. I waited till a camp thing, because we're outside, we're in nature, we're at camp, we're playing in the dirt, right? A little bit of history for you guys. Some people think that this is a dessert that kind of started based on the Mississippi mud pie. Mississippi mud pie is like a gooey kind of chocolate sauce on top of a... like cookie crumb crust. And that has actually only been around since about 1975. According to some food historians, from what I could figure out, Food Timeline, Steve's going to take a taste of it here while I talk. This is something that really did start in the 1980s. And somebody kind of came up with this, possibly a kid's version of Mississippi mud pie. Mm-hmm. The earliest printed version is in like the late 80s, and it's called Kansas Dirt Cake, even though it's not really cake. And that had margarine with confectioner's sugar and Cool Whip, and then that was blended with pudding, and then the Oreos on top.
Okay.
So this particular recipe is from my Aunt Billy. My Aunt Billy... her real name was Wilhelmina, but you could see why she wanted to go by Billy.
Yes.
My Aunt Billy was a floral designer. She was a florist. And She did these beautiful arrangements. And so the one day, we're at a party and she brings this flower pot and it's got silk flowers in it.
Yep. And
then we look closer and there's gummy worms. And she had made dirt, but she did it in, like, the most beautiful way. Like, yes. It would be on Pinterest. That's how beautiful this dirt was. And I only had it, like, maybe 3 or 4 times since she made it. Then she passed when I was in high school, and then I became gluten-free. So, Oreo just released a gluten-free Oreo.
Version, yes.
And so, I'm about to have, for the first time... in probably 15 years at least, an Oreo. I'm very excited.
So I've seen this dirt concoction before. I was actually I think it was in college. I went to a summer camp for a week, like right after college ended. It was for college kids. And they served as a dessert for lunch one day. They had these as like the centerpieces.
Oh, fun.
And so there was like a plant pot, and then they had like a fake flower in it, but it was filled with, like, the top was crushed up just the Oreo part of the Oreo cookie.
Right.
So it looked like legit dirt, and it was crushed up really fine. And then inside, I think it was chocolate pudding.
Yeah, some of the versions have chocolate and some have vanilla.
Yeah, so basically, and a lot of us, I guess some people had probably been there before and knew what it was, but I didn't think about it. And they were like, okay, your dessert is already in front of you. Like, dig in. And we were like, what the heck? And then we dug in, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Yeah. So I had seen it before in that manner. So, yeah, it's interesting.
It's kind of fun, and I'm going to link the recipe on the blog because, unlike some of my grandmother's recipes, which, by the way, she told me, don't give these to anybody, especially not people in our family. They won't make it right. Sorry nice. I know some of my cousins listen to this. I'm sorry. My grandma was like, there's a particular pie. Mm-hmm. And she was like, I know some of your cousins and they'll use skim milk instead of heavy cream. And I'm like, I don't know that they would do that, but all right. Anyway, my Aunt Billy did not make any such claim to the dirt recipe.
Okay.
And Jell-O, in fact, kind of capitalized on this, and they put out different, like, full-page ads with recipes for dirt. The one that we have here is 2 blocks of cream cheese mixed with 3 cups of confectioner's sugar.
Oh, boy.
Which I felt like was maybe a lot, but I did follow the recipe.
Okay.
Then it's 2 things of instant pudding that you make.
Yeah.
And then you mix that with a large thing of Cool Whip.
Okay.
So it's the pudding, the Cool Whip, the cream cheese, and the sugar.
In case you didn't have enough confectioner's sugar.
And then you layer it with the Oreos, and then you're supposed to, like you said, very finely crumble them on top, which I didn't have time for.
Okay, well, that's a lot of sugar. I'm glad I'm going to be up late playing Dungeons & Dragons tonight.
Well, we only have a little bit of it here because it was so much that I was like, we cannot, the 2 of us, just eat this. So we'll take it to a church picnic in a little bit and get all the kids there hopped up on sugar, which should be hilarious. So, so that's dirt. A little bit of history of dirt. A dessert that really did start in the 80s just with parents kind of experimenting with different things, and then the company picked up on it, and now it's like a thing that kids have. I want to cry right now because I haven't had an Oreo in so long. And I was never a huge Oreo person, but this with the cream cheese and the pudding, it's so good.
All right, so that gets to our ratings.
All right, so we are at camp. We're doing Salute Your Shorts.
So we should rate it out of
cabins?
Okay, cabins works.
Camp cabins. 1 out of 5 for the snack. We always pick something random, but it's 1 out of 5 for the snack and 1 out of 10 for the show. Oh, this is a clear 10. I want to eat that whole bucket right now.
But that you can't give it a 10. You can only give it a 5.
Oh, I can only give it a 5.
Yes.
It's too much.
We just explained this system to the listeners.
I know, but I'm so excited. The dirt's so good. I haven't had an Oreo. You guys don't know. Here's the thing. When you're gluten-free, we talked about this with the Girl Scout cookies. They have now a gluten-free Girl Scout cookie. It's very sandy. This Oreo tastes like an Oreo. Did it taste like an Oreo to you?
Yeah. Yeah, it's good.
My point, you can't tell the difference.
Right. Though. No, it's good. It's very well done, especially for a gluten-free thing.
I don't want to, cry about it.
Don't cry about it.
Most gluten-free stuff tastes so bad, you guys don't even know.
So I'm also going to give it a 5. It's sweet, which I like. Pudding, Oreos all together, which are all things I like. And it's also pretty instant. You guys, we know how I don't like patient snacks.
No, I know.
So I don't have to wait. I don't have to unwrap it. I don't have to lick it for a long time.
That's gross.
Right?
Yeah.
So I can just eat it and consume it quickly. So I like that too. So I'll give it a 5 cabins.
The tang of the cream cheese and the sweetness of the pudding and the Oreo, it all goes together really well. It's beautiful. Yes. All right. So hope you guys enjoy it too. I'll link that recipe on our blog. So...
Yeah. 5 cabins out of 5.
5 out of 5 cabins for Oreo Dirt. Love it. And now we're going to come into our summary of the show.
This is a series that's about teenage kids. It's set in a fictional summer camp, Camp Anawana. And it focuses on the campers basically having fun, doing pranks on each other, overcoming camper drama kind of stuff, and their strict and bossy counselor, who is in like his 20s, maybe.
Ugh.
Yep. And the various like capers and jocularities and things like that happen each episode.
The jocularities?
The jocularities, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought I was dealing with a highbrow crowd here.
No.
Apparently I'm not.
All right. Yeah, so I think that this has kind of an interesting story behind it. So we have two individuals. The first is Stephen Slavkin, and the second is his co-writer, Thomas Hill. So they wrote a book together called Salute Your Shorts, Life at Summer Camp. And there's this great video I'm going to link on the blog of, I think it was from their 25th reunion. The whole cast and crew got together at a conference in Portland. And they have this great panel discussion. So some of our fun facts are from there and some are from different articles I found online. But basically he said that he wanted to write this book about what camp was really like. So things like, you know, you go away and your parents think that you're going to have a nickname like Champ or Slugger. And instead you get a nickname like Loser or Donkey Lips. Right. And so they toured for this book and they really heavily promoted it in 1986. Eventually, the book did pretty well. They met with Propaganda Films, or Stephen Slavkin at least did. And then, so that's a production company, not they don't actually make propaganda. And they took it to Nickelodeon. And in 1990, they talked with Jay Mulvaney, and he was like, this is a great fit for Nickelodeon because, as Steve just said, it's the jocularities of what happens at a summer camp. But it's a space for kids, right? Without, like, the influence or the interference of parents and adults.
They had things like You Can't Do That on Television and, you know, other things that dealt with teenage kids and kind of were comedies a little bit. So that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's kids in a kid environment. So they did the pilot in 1990, and then they waited a year, and Nickelodeon, like, wouldn't give them straight answers, wouldn't pick it up. Eventually, a year later, it gets picked up. But when they bring the cast in to, like, kind of, you know, bring them back, a bunch of them are too old now. Because they're supposed to be and really look 13, 14.
Right.
Well, now you have these like 16, 17-year-olds who are like kind of looking more sophisticated than what they wanted. So they only brought back 3 people, Ugg the Counselor, Donkey Lips, and Budnick. All the other parts were recast. And the girl who played Telly talked about the casting process. Like, she read for all the female roles, but she really wanted, like, the one in particular. So I think it sounded like they kind of did that with most of the parts.
Okay.
Like, it could have just kind of seeing, like, who was a good fit for what. The kid who played Sponge said that he really only auditioned for that, though, because he was, like, he felt like he was kind of a nerd and a misunderstood genius.
Right.
Like, he wanted that part. And my favorite audition story, though, is Michael, who played Donkey Lips. And he said that they had him do this scene where he ate, like, dry macaroni the way you would do in camp to make, like, pictures and stuff. He broke a tooth. They thought he was acting, and they all laughed. And then, so he has this crazy audition where he breaks a tooth, and he gets a call from his agent a year later saying, hey, we think you'll be great for this part on this show, Salute Your Shorts. And he was like, I already did that show. So he comes in, and the producers are like, why are you here? You're already on the show. But then he goes, I guess I'm here to audition. And he basically did the same thing again and had to eat this dry macaroni. I guess a little more carefully the second time. But I just thought that was such a funny story. The theme song, they wanted to be a little irreverent, and that's why the word fart is in there. Apparently, it's the only television theme song with that word in the lyrics. But the second verse of that song has Donkey Lips holding, like, a fishing rod going, this thing came apart. And apparently he ad-libbed that.
Oh, okay.
So he was supposed to say again, it makes me want to fart, but when they gave him the prop, it actually did fall apart. And he was like, what if I just like kind of use that? And then it ended up being in the beginning part of the show, which I thought was kind of fun. A lot of them had ailments or injuries just like you would get at a real camp, like eye injury or hurting yourself from while you're swimming or whatever. Yes. And they also said that it was really like, for many of them, being at a camp. Several of the kids there, sometimes kid actors don't always have a lot of friends. Mm-hmm. And there might be, usually when you're that age of like 11, 12, 13, you might be the only kid your age on a set.
Right.
So this was a totally different experience. And they had to learn things like playing basketball, playing volleyball, going kayaking, like all of the stuff that they would then have to do in the show, right?
Yes.
So I thought that that was just kind of fun. And they also enjoyed the fact that a lot of them are kind of based in stock characters.
Right.
Like the jerk and the nerd and the fat kid. But they talked about how the plots on the show, the writing, for what it was, allowed them to kind of explore these types that they would be pigeonholed in, but like to round out their characters.
Right.
So they have, for instance, an episode where Donkey Lips likes Dina, right? And he's able to be like, for an episode at least, kind of a leading guy.
Yeah.
Where he's flirting with a girl and she might give him a chance if they weren't at camp together every day. That kind of thing, where a lot of shows would always have him be just the best friend.
Right.
Right? So I thought that was kind of a nice fun fact as well. In terms of production, though, they really tried to do something different with this show. That, they didn't have it just be like, we've talked about single cam and multicam. They didn't just have like a sitcom setup, and all of that kind of thing. They wanted it to be filmed more, with single cam from one angle and then another angle. And we could see that. We'll talk about it as we go into the episodes, how that effect is kind of used. In some instances, it seems a little dated because they're using like a fisheye lens and stuff.
Right.
But it has a different look than like the multicam with cameras in just one set. Yeah. Right. They're moving around. They're walking through the woods. They're by the lake. It's set at the camp, but it's not like just in the cabin all the time or just outside.
They want it to be authentic.
Yeah, and they wanted the kids to be authentic too. Like, the producer in this panel says one of the girls' moms came up to him and was like, I have something horrible to tell you. My daughter wants braces. And he's like, yeah, get her braces. Like, let the kid not have...
And they wrote into the show.
Yeah, and they have... Well, they wanted the kids to look natural. They were like, just have them wake up in the morning and do their hair the way they would do it and come in.
Yeah, there was no hair and makeup on set.
Yeah,
because they wanted the kids to look like they had been at camp.
Which, at camp, you're like, have a collective shower sometimes.
Right.
And you might not always... that's why we ate dirt for our snack, right? Yeah. Like, it's that kind of thing. What also fascinates me is that, this was only 26 episodes over 2 seasons. So it ran from, the summer of 91 and then the summer of 92. Mm-hmm. And, they played these episodes so many times. Like, I was honestly surprised when we looked at how many episodes there were. Because I remember it being a bigger thing that was on all the time.
Yeah.
Like, we got cable around this point, so that might have been part of it too.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, it's kind of comparable. We haven't watched this. I don't know if we will. I guess it was around the same time, but it feels to me more like a younger kids show that maybe we didn't watch as much. But Lizzie McGuire was on Disney. Lizzie McGuire was only on for 2 seasons and had 31 episodes. Mm-hmm. Again, when I think about that show and how much it was on, and then the fact that with that show there were like movies and they did a reboot later on, like, it felt to me like there was like at least 100 episodes to put it into syndication.
Yes.
But really, like, that's how these networks worked. It wasn't like the amount of content that we have today with like Netflix or Hulu, where there's a new show like every couple weeks, right? They really milked this for all it was worth. I think. Yeah, so that's kind of my last fun fact. Just that it was only 26 episodes, but it had these legs. They do reunions every so often. They do autograph signings, and people just really love it.
In the production, it was funny because they hit a couple other little things. Like they wanted to do an episode where the kids like snuck out to go after candy.
Oh yeah.
But they were told they couldn't because of childhood obesity.
Okay.
So they have an episode where the kids sneak out to go after fruit, which sort of loses itself.
Not the same.
You know, one of the episodes we watched, they mentioned soda, but it's like locked up.
Right.
Like,
right.
And that surprised me, knowing that they had gotten such kickback from candy.
Well, but they're not drinking it all the time.
Yeah.
It's ration.
Yeah. And instead of candy, like and I think it was it might have been the same episode we saw, they mentioned as a reward at the end, we're going to get ice cream. Like, instead of candy. So, which is still sweet, but not necessarily connected with junk food as much. Well, but
it's also showing that it's a treat and not an everyday thing.
Right.
Right? Yeah, so the series was not renewed for a third season. They thought about it, but they wanted the cast to go to Nickelodeon Studios to lower the cost of production. Nickelodeon Studios is in Orlando. The cast was in LA. So you can see, especially for child actors and some of their, their parents probably had lives and jobs and stuff. And they also wanted to reduce the budget because Nickelodeon was connected to MTV and they wanted to fund Beavis and Butthead.
Oh, that makes sense.
A show that we will probably never do on this show.
Also, the author of the book, is it Steven Slavnik?
Yeah, Slavnik.
He was in the show as well. He was Dr. Khan.
Oh!
Who you never see. He's the camp director that you only hear on the loudspeaker.
Oh, that's such
So he was the voice of Dr. Khan.
That's a great fun fact. So we will take a break here. When we come back, we will talk about our memories or lack thereof in the case of Steve. And then we will get into our full review and recap.
Hey everyone, Nick here from the S1E1 podcast. Each week, we pick a different sitcom, watch just the first televised episode, and ignoring anything we may know about the future run of that series, decide if it's a show that we want to greenlight or cancel.
We very seriously dissect TV shows for no reason at all.
I gotta pee. Fucking old-timey. I got a Frankenstein on my show. So do I.
You should know, because right now you're dressed like a London DJ. Moving forward, unless there's anything else depressing about my life you want to bring up.
That's impressive to find that many bad shows.
Who's Boner? I don't even know what a Banksy is.
Catch us each week wherever you listen to podcasts and visit us at s1e1pod.com for links to everywhere you can find us.
Welcome back. I'm Steve.
I'm Megan.
And we're going to get into the memories from Salute Your Shorts. So, Megan, why don't you talk about your memories?
Okay, yeah, I don't think that I saw this right in 91, 92, because thinking about it after I did the fun facts, like while we were doing the commercial break, I think that I saw it a little bit later when we got cable, so like 93, 94. So I remember that my brother really liked this show, and he just thought, especially Budnick, who's kind of like, he's a jerk, but he's like a cool jerk. You know, the way the actor put it on the panel was that they called him and they said, hey, want to play this character? He's an a-hole. And he was like, wait, what are you trying to say about me? But yeah, Tim really liked it. And I started watching along with him because I think I had already just been to camp.
Okay.
So I went, the first time I went away to overnight camp, I went to a couple different ones, but in 6th grade, I went to confirmation camp. Mm-hmm. So I grew up Lutheran, and as a Lutheran, you go through confirmation usually in like 7th and 8th grade. But I think I went through in 6th and 7th, or I might have done 6th, 7th, and 8th. At any rate, they had a camp that they called confirmation camp, but basically it was middle schoolers. Mm-hmm. So, during that time, you kind of like learn more about, like theology and stuff for confirmation, and then you say like, yes, I want to like be in the church or whatever. It's like,
right.
yeah. So, but the camp had like, they had like Bible studies and stuff, and we had some like worship time because it's a Christian camp, but it kind of blends that along with like what other people might think of as like normal camp activities. Mm-hmm. So it was right on Lake Erie, and we would go in the lake and do hikes in the woods and do, you know, games and crafts and all of that kind of stuff. So I also I've mentioned this before, I did go to an academic camp where we took like fun classes like Shakespeare and journalism and that kind of stuff. But again, we also you had to do a sport or a game for one of your classes, and there was like an art or a music for one of your classes as well. So you kind of took classes, but also like there was a lake because it was on one of the Finger Lakes, and like we had a lot of fun as well.
This was before the Geneva Convention that said you can't torture people.
It wasn't torture. It was so much fun because it was like enrichment.
Oh,
it wasn't
sweetie.
No, I can't explain it right because it wasn't like being in a class.
What did you do for your summer? Enrichment. Megan.
One of my other summers, I did summer school for fun. And
oh boy.
We did like 4 weeks of Japanese, 4 weeks of French, and 4 weeks of Spanish. That was at my elementary school though.
We had radically different childhoods.
Yeah. So at any rate, I ended up later on working at the Christian camp, and yeah, I was there for many years at that camp. I also worked at Upward Bound camp as well, which kids come in from the inner city and they take enrichment courses, but to help them academically for the next year.
Yes.
And if they're a certain level in high school, they take college classes on campus. And they're there for the whole summer. So that was an interesting experience. So, yeah, so I kind of just always associated this show with those memories because I felt like they were like real kids. And it reminds me a little bit of like Saved by the Bell in a way. What I mean by real kids is like more than say, they're a little bit older, but like Beverly Hills 90210.
Right. Oh yeah, they did a good job of having them seem like relatable.
Yeah, they're supposed to be like kind of normal.
Yep.
Early teens or preteens, right? Yeah. So I know you didn't see this show, but you were at a camp, and this is called Salute Your Shorts, based on like the prank where you take somebody's boxer shorts and run them up the flagpole.
Yep.
And a lot of these are pranks. Did you guys have any pranks like that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't see this show, really, when I was growing up, but I went to camp. So I did, I went to Boy Scout camp specifically, and then I worked at Boy Scout camp for 5 or 6 years. And so in my teens, late teens, things like that. So we did a lot, and staff do a lot of prank kind of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So it was a great time. My camp was more real camp. It didn't involve church or academics. We did things like canoeing and archery and BB guns and knot tying and nature.
I don't like your attitude right now.
Things you do at camp.
We took kids on canoe trips, and we had archery and stuff like that. We also had an obstacle course in the woods, like a ropes course.
Sure you did, sweetie. And you had to like calculate the distance.
No.
And make a project on it.
No, but you talk about how God helps you.
Okay.
You do talk about how God helps you overcome obstacles and stuff. Yeah.
But yeah, so I had a blast growing up doing that in camp. So this show did remind me a little bit like that. And we had, most of the time, like I said, I had spent time as a camper, but most of my time I was actually a counselor.
Right, yeah, me too.
So I understood that concept as well. And a lot of my bonds were built as a counselor. So, but we did do things like that. We did pranks, especially normally at the end of a season, we would do like a big staff prank.
Okay.
Normally what we do is we'd wait until after the kids left, unless it was something, or to make sure it was something that didn't interfere with programming.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Right. But like one time, we put one of the adult staff members' car on a raft in the middle of the lake.
Okay. That's actually really good.
Yes. Another time we stacked all of the chairs and tables in the dining hall into a pyramid.
These are like legit. This is kind of what we saw on the show. Like, these are really intricate. Like,
yes.
we would just, like, scare people in the woods when we knew they were camping there overnight.
Oh, no. We went above and beyond, yeah. Another time we ran a boat up the flagpole.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, shorts is for amateurs, but that's okay.
Did you get the boat to not break?
No,
that's a lot of weight.
It was like a metal rowboat, and we had a steel flagpole.
Yeah, but
it was cemented into the ground.
But you only have whatever string is there.
It's pretty good rope.
All right.
Yeah, we tied it in a few places and ran that puppy up.
This is Boy Scout camp.
Yeah.
Let's work on our knot skills.
Yeah, we figured this out. Don't you worry. So yeah, there was a lot of things like that. And of course, we were out a lot of times we were doing things like past curfew. We were running around at night and things like that.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun, but that reminded me of it a little bit. I wonder, as I'm thinking about this, if part of the reason that this didn't go further as a show, like part of the reason it didn't go past 2 seasons, is the fact that they were kind of late to the party, right? I feel like the 70s and 80s especially were really big summer camp decades, and by 90, when they're coming out with this show, the late 80s and early 90s became a lot more like latchkey kid stuff, where parents just left their kids home in the summer but didn't do things. Like, there was HBO, there was video games coming out, and not as many kids went to camp in the 90s, and especially the 2000s. They went to summer camp in the decades before that.
Yeah, I was thinking, sorry for interrupting you. I guess I was going to say, I mean, even when I worked at camp, so the last year that I worked at the Christian camp, I think was 2002.
Mm-hmm.
After I graduated, I was dating somebody who was running the camp, so I ended up kind of working there as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we had really robust programming. We had a lot of people there. Having said that, the kids who came to that camp, they came for a week.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they would come for a week, they'd leave for the weekend, and they'd come back another week.
Okay.
But I think that you're right in that what they're depicting here, a lot like The Parent Trap.
Right.
60s, 70s, and 80s, you would have kids who just went away for the whole summer.
Right.
And yeah, I never did that, in part because my parents were both teachers, so they were off in the summer. Right? But, yeah, I didn't think about that maybe kids couldn't relate to it quite as much.
And the kids that were going to your camp were a very select group, because it was Christian kids that were going there because of their church.
Yeah.
Right? The same with me. Boy Scouts, you go to summer camp as a Boy Scout.
Right.
But it used to be, especially like the 70s and 80s, people who weren't in Scout would go to summer camp.
Right. Yeah, and I'm thinking, too, so my brother, who's kind of like an Xennial, he's like in between Gen X and Millennials, because he's right 1983, I think. Yeah. He's right there. He went to day camp, which I knew a lot of kids at that. Okay. So, like, in the like you're saying, in the 90s into the 2000s, a lot more kids would go to day camp, and that's still going on today.
Yeah, well, now you have sports camps,
right,
where they'll go and do soccer or basketball or something like that.
So I think he did a day camp at, like, in our town, it was through this thing called the Keenan Center, but they also had it, like, through the Y. Mm-hmm. And you'd go to, I worked at a day camp as well through the Y for a couple summers in grad school. So you would go to the camp, and it was like at a school, or sometimes the Y had an actual camp.
Yeah.
But you would just be there from, like, I think most of our kids were there from like 9 to maybe 3, like same kind of school hours.
Right.
Right. Tim's, I think, was just 9 to 12 for his soccer camp that he did. Maybe 8 to 1 at the outset of it. Yeah, I think you're right that I think became much more common. And as you know, a lot of the camps now are closing. So the Christian camp that I worked at closed. A number of people who used to work there worked together to buy it, and now they're kind of fixing it up. We live a little bit far away for me to kind of help with that effort. I have donated, but I'd like to go and actually kind of help. But they're trying to kind of revive it. The Boy Scout camp you worked at also sold, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Or went just...
The Boy Scouts sold it, yeah.
They did, yeah. So, to me, it's kind of sad in this show, and then the movie that we're going to watch for next week, they have... When we watch this, there is this sense of nostalgia for something that is kind of lost. Because that's like a whole culture that's kind of gone.
Yeah, it's not around as much anymore.
Now that I feel sad and old, let's get into our full review and recap.
All right, so full review or in-depth review. We did 2 episodes of Salute Your Shorts. The first one we chose from season 1, episode 4, and you chose this one.
Yep.
And it was Wrath of Khan Jr.
Yes.
A play off of course, Star Trek, but the fact that the director of camp's name is Dr. Khan.
Yeah. Well, we had just gone to this Star Trek kind of museum.
Yes.
Like replica place. So that was on my mind. And when I saw the title, I was like, yeah let's choose that one.
So basically, the camp director's niece, Ellen, comes to visit camp.
Yes.
And... You know, Ugg, the counselor, is all concerned. He wants her to have a fun time so that she tells her uncle and then he gets a promotion or a raise and doesn't lose his job. And so he puts her with the kids to have them basically show her around camp. And at first, everything seems okay. But then they realize that she can kind of get away with anything.
Yeah,
because
she's
anytime she likes to cause trouble, and anytime she does, Ugg isn't going to say anything to her because he doesn't want her to go back to her uncle and complain.
Right.
So they start to use that. The rest of the kids are like, oh, this is awesome. Like, let's do stuff. So the girls kind of partner with her to water balloon the boys.
Yeah.
And attack them. And, you know, they think that it's great because now they can't get in trouble either. They're with Ellen. But then Ellen turns on them and trashes their room just because she can. Yeah,
she's troubled. Obviously.
She's troubled, and she likes attention.
Yeah, she wants.
So
attention.
she trashes the girls' room, which angers them. Then she goes in and she messes with the boys. She starts to trash the boys' room. She also ties up the one boy to the train tracks.
Yeah. But it's a model train.
It's a model train, but still, there's a sense of danger, Megan.
She
ties him up old school style to the train tracks and has the train running towards him. And she just starts to really screw around with camp, and she becomes basically like an enemy to the kids. So the kids turn on her and decide to kind of teach her a lesson.
Yeah, so first, basically, they ignore her, and then her behavior kind of continues, and so they pull a prank on her to get revenge. Dr. Khan?
Yes.
He's happy because she's never been disciplined. Ugg's happy because he gets credit for it, even though he was just bumbling the whole time.
Yes.
And then Ellen's like, I might come back next year. And they're like, oh no.
Yeah.
So that's basically the general
threaten
overview.
to do a prank on her called an awful waffle.
Yeah.
Which actually happens a lot in this show. They utilize that prank they call the awful waffle, but they never do it. It's like a threat all the time. Like here they're like, awful waffle. And Ugg's like, no, you can't do that to her. Like it's all, I don't know if they ever show you what that actual prank is.
That wasn't the prank that they do with the eggs and the flour?
I
think that's why it's called
that's
an awful
supposed to be
waffle.
what it is. Okay.
Yeah, they don't call it that at the time, but
Okay.
they throw eggs on her, and then the flour comes up, and then feathers, right?
Okay, so they basically tar and feather her with eggs and flour.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
because they mention it in a number of other episodes as well.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, there was like this independent band in the 2000s that named itself Awful Waffle.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Based off of this.
They're big fans.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the beats here. What I liked when Ugg first says that somebody has to take Ellen around camp, and nobody she's just standing there, nobody volunteers, which I thought was very realistic.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, no, none of us want to do this. They also do, this is something that I forgot, and I don't remember which camp did this, but they do like a chant where he's like, hey, everybody, and they're like, Ricka Chicka, hey! Like, they do like a weird chant.
Yeah.
Which I just thought was kind of funny. It's one of those things, like, we had a thing, like, in the dining hall where we would always, like, do certain, like, chants to get everybody quiet.
Yes.
And then you pray before you eat.
Right.
I love camp so much. But yeah, it's those kind of, like, that's the thing about having a space just for kids, that they come up with their own rituals.
Yeah.
And then those rituals, like here it's in the 90s, that Ricka Chicka Hey is not a 90s thing. That's like a 50s or a 40s thing that kept getting passed down. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I just thought that was kind of funny.
We would have a closing campfire every week when we did, because our people rotated by the week.
Yeah.
And we would have a closing campfire where we did a lot of songs, and the staff had certain skits they would do and things like that.
Yeah,
so
we had that too. And we always had like a song that we played right at the end of the closing campfire to make everybody, yeah. But the other thing, the thing I thought was not realistic is that Ugg wants everybody to take Ellen around so he doesn't have to, so he can work on his tan. Did you ever have time for that as a camp counselor?
I did
I
not.
sure didn't. When you're a camp counselor, you're basically on duty 24/7.
Yeah.
And you get like maybe Friday the campers leave.
Yeah.
And you get a break for like a day.
The other thing about this episode that I will say was not unrealistic, but I think it bit into a heavy stereotype of nepotism.
Yes.
Right? Where she gets away with anything because she's the niece of the director.
Yeah.
I found that to be opposite, because at my camp, like a few of the years when I was working there as I was older, like the camp director, her daughter worked there, and she ran an area, and she had to do like more work than most people.
Yeah.
Because the director just pushed it on her because it was her kid, right? I was the program director, which is like the second in charge, and my younger brother Kevin was a CIT. Mm-hmm. And like he was like my secretary. Like I made him do a lot of stuff. Now there was a little bit of truth to this, because there was a number of times I came to the office and found him sleeping.
Well, that's Kevin. He likes a nap.
Well, the problem was the older staff kept him up all night.
Oh,
in the middle of the night, and then he would fall asleep during the day. But again, it was not like I would tear into him and be like, what are you doing sleeping? Like, get up and go do stuff, right? And I would send him running all over camp. So it was almost like we were more apt to put more stuff on them because they're family. We can put things on them.
And also a lot of times, like, the way that it works at a camp especially is that I know, like, for instance, the person at the Christian camp who did the maintenance, he lived with his family on site, basically, all year.
Yeah, we had a ranger like that.
And so, yeah, he kind of put a lot on his kids because eventually they might take that position over. And also because you have 4 kids, like, let's get them to work.
Yep.
You know, that kind of thing. But yeah, my first time as a CIT, I set my alarm wrong, and I set it for 7 p.m. to wake up instead of 7 a.m. And then I was late for my shift, and people came and got me. They were like, what the heck? It's not the best way to start. The song comes after this. So they have the tag to set up the scene and set the premise. What'd you think of the song?
I mean, it was okay.
Because this is the thing where, as a kid, my brother thought this song was hilarious.
Because it says fart.
And he would, like, yell that line out.
Yeah, it's one of the only show songs that ever says fart in it.
And he was, like, probably 8, you know?
Right.
Shouting that out. I thought that it was funny that the kids were off-key. And this, to me, is a sign that this is a Nickelodeon show and not a Disney show.
Yes.
Because Disney shows, you know, I mentioned Lizzie McGuire, things like that, they were always way more polished, way less realistic looking or acting. And they have a big emphasis on singing ability in almost all their shows. They
this
want
had
their
more
kids
authenticity to it because most kids are not on key, especially when they're 12 and 13 years old.
Yeah, because their voices are changing. Yes. But this was so off key. And I'm like, oh, nobody probably told them. The camera work I kind of noticed right away as well. what did you think about the way that they did that?
It looks a bit amateur-y.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they did that on purpose because it's a camp, because like we said, there's no hair and makeup. There's no, they really wanted to go with like that real feel, or if it's just because it's 1990 as well. Like I'm looking at it and judging it as today's standards. But I mean, it's not, it wasn't so bad that it distracted me.
It distracted me a little bit.
It was just obvious that it was not the same.
Yeah, I wonder, so that what they would do is they would film kind of the normal scene, and then they have these, and they do have from multiple angles, so you can tell that they're redoing it, right? They're doing different takes and then putting them together. But what they would do at certain points is have like this extreme close-up camera, and it's almost like a fisheye lens. First of all, it seemed to be used pretty sporadically. So it's not like they're doing that at like an emotional time or and that to me, I guess it did feel amateurish. I'm guessing also because you can really tell it's not HD. So for people who are used to, this is over 25 years old, this show, right? So we're used to a different look and a different feel. But it did make it feel dated.
Oh, definitely, yes.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think it's supposed to make it seem like kids are filming it.
Or at least that it's almost like a home movie quality.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of agree with that. Then we have the antics of Ellen. What was your favorite piece from this?
I did like where she spread out makeup.
Yeah.
The one girl has like really expensive makeup. It's interesting too because they're trying to use like out of the girls, like it's almost like every kid is a little bit of a kid stereotype, right? The girls, you have like the girly girl, you have the nature girl, and then you have like the sports girl.
Yes.
Right? And so she like gets into the girly girl's expensive makeup that's not made anymore and spreads it all over like snow.
She spreads it around like cocaine. It's like Scarface in this scene.
I thought snow, but I'm obviously a little bit more of a, like, I'm a little bit more naive and innocent than you are.
I'm probably just thinking of Cartoon All-Stars again.
Yeah, I don't know why you were like Scarface. Like, it's kids in a camp, Megan.
I know, but
it's not Colombian cartels.
Yeah, you're right. I kind of did like the kind of dweeby guy Sponge, like Star Trek, and now he's playing with model trains, so she sabages that.
And he's got a computer, which is like old school. I mean,
yes, and she wipes it by this is the kind of computer with a screen that was where all the words were green. And you play Oregon Trail.
Yeah.
And
the monitor and the keyboard were connected, and it took the 5 1/4 floppies.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she basically types in erase or wipe.
And it wipes out the whole computer. And it just wipes it out. And he's like, now I have to format the whole computer again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is just kind of funny to me. And then there's the guy who's the musician, and she snaps his guitar strings, she ruins his drum, like those kind of things. While this is going on, so I thought it was funny because we hadn't watched any other episodes. It's only episode 4. They're still kind of establishing who these people are a little bit. So all the things she sabotages do tell you something about those characters, especially since it focuses more on Ellen herself.
But there's almost an assumption that these kids have been together a long time.
Yeah.
Even though it's only the 4th episode.
I went back and watched episode 1, and at least the episode 1 that's on Prime, there isn't a pilot of like everybody coming to camp.
No, it's like they're at camp already. Yeah.
The part I didn't like though was that Ugg keeps bribing them.
Yeah, and not good. It's not an effective bribe.
No.
Like, she breaks all their stuff, and he opens his wallet and is like, I'll pay for all of it, guys. And he hands them each, like, $1 or $2. The one kid's drums got trashed. That's, like, hundreds of dollars in damage.
Yeah. But also, why not bribe her to not do it anymore?
Yeah. Because he can't control her. Yeah.
But, yeah, I didn't really like how the camp counselor was portrayed. But, realistically, this is something that, I don't know, I wouldn't say struggled with, but one of the things that happens when you're a camp counselor, at least for me, is that you're in this situation where you're like 19 And some of my campers were high school. Like, we had weeks with like elementary, weeks with family, weeks with middle school, weeks with high school. So some of my campers would be like 17 or 18. And I was only like a year older than them.
Yeah.
Maybe 2. When I worked at the Upward Bound program, because of it was my freshman year of college, some of the kids were in their senior year of high school, that there were campers that were older than I was.
Yeah,
so
that's weird.
It's difficult to try to be like an authority figure when you're 18 and there's somebody else who's like 19 and they're like, whatever.
That's an organizational issue because they shouldn't be doing that.
Well, they didn't. They realized it after they hired me. Yeah. They were like, you're only 18. And I was like, yeah. But this is to me a little bit realistic. He's supposed to be 20. The oldest camper there is maybe 15. Mm-hmm. You're still in college, and it's not like high school's that far away, so I can see how he wouldn't be that effective.
Right.
Right? And again, it's supposed to be a kid's space with little adult interference. They make him more bumbling. As we said, the episode ends with this Rube Goldberg machine where she's tarred and feathered with eggs and flour and some feathers.
Yes.
And everything works out. Ugg gets a day off. And a raise, Ellen leaves, and the campers have all sort of been made.
Although she's learned her lesson so much that she might come back next year as a camper.
And she's going to go and do the awful waffle on people she knows back home.
Yeah, she learned that, and she was pretty happy about it.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if that's a great lesson, but...
Well, this isn't to show, like... This is, Budnick tries to have at certain points, I forgot to mention this, but he tries to have at certain points, like, heart-to-heart talks with her. Mm-hmm. And I put in my notes, I learned something today. Because that's how 80s sitcoms were always structured. And they subvert that expectation by having her go, oh, yeah, and she puts a kick me sign on his back. So he thinks that he's done this great thing.
He thinks he got through to her, and she was just...
So... It's a Nickelodeon show.
Yeah.
It's meant to be irreverent and fun, and you don't learn lessons or have morals. Right? So...
It's also the second episode we've now done with a Rube Goldberg machine.
I know, I was thinking that.
Because Danny and the Care Bears used one to try to catch the ghost. Last episode.
My Little Pony.
Or My Little Pony, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, Danny and the My Little Ponies.
Yeah, tried to use a Rube Goldberg machine. And now they used one in this episode.
Yeah, it must have been a big thing.
Must have been a big thing. You remember...
It's in Back to the Future as well.
You remember the game Mousetrap?
Yes.
Yeah, so it must have been a big thing. That might have made that
popular. I love that game. We should do an episode where we just talk about games. So then, anyway, that brings us to our second episode.
We went to season 2.
Yep.
And episode 2, and I chose this one. It was Ghost Story, to go with our theme of ghosts that we've had for the last few episodes.
Yes.
And so basically here the kids all get together at a campfire to tell ghost stories. Mm-hmm. And Zeke, is it Zeke?
Yeah.
Yeah. They tell a story about this guy named Zeke who has no nose, who was a janitor, like a custodian, who blew up and is looking for his plunger.
Right.
So he's a ghost of a custodian who's like seeking out his plunger, and basically like he has a mask, and it's almost like a kind of Jason thing.
It's Freddy Krueger, right? Because isn't that...
Well, it's a mix.
Okay.
Because Jason is at camp.
Right.
And has the mask.
But
Freddy is in dreams.
But he was supposed to be a custodian who caught on fire.
No, well, he caught on fire. He was not a custodian.
Yes, he was.
No, he was caught in a factory.
I thought he was a custodian who molested kids. And
he was a pedophile. But he was I don't know if he was a custodian. I know they chased him to a factory, and that's where he was. They burned him.
Oh wow, we're gonna have to revisit that movie because I do not remember. Oh, they don't do that in the first one though. Do they?
I think they might.
I don't know. Anyway, that's another one for October, possibly.
So anyway, this story is told about Zeke, and one of the girls,
Telly.
Telly is one of the girls, and the other kid is this new kid. This is the other thing with season 2. They moved William out,
right?
Who was one of the kids.
They bring in Mike.
They bring in Mike, who is blonde. William was not. He was William kind of like fell into the background a little bit, at least in the episode we did on season 1. But they bring in Mike, who's blonde, and he's supposed to be like a lady killer. I mean, for a 12-year-old.
For a 12-year-old.
Right? And so Mike and Telly's the sports girl, they really get, like, kind of scared by this, and they both have nightmares about Zeke.
Yes.
And so Telly even, like, convinces the other girls, and they, like, put toothpaste around their beds because they think it's going to stop ghosts from coming.
Yeah, again, there's these, like, childhood rituals.
Yeah, and it's funny because they're rituals that, like, kids hear stuff and then they mess it up.
Yeah.
So, like, I first started seeing her do this, and I go, oh, she's putting salt around her bed, which is a very known thing to, like, block demons or ghosts, right?
Yeah.
And then she's doing toothpaste. I'm like, okay, this is like a kid that doesn't understand this, right?
Well, it's also supposed to be funny.
Yeah.
Right.
And so you've got this whole thing of them being scared. Butnick, who told, who's kind of the bully a little bit, and who told the Zeke story, starts, like, screwing with them a little bit about it. And so they challenge him to stay out in the woods all night by himself and not be killed by Zeke.
Well, and also to prove that he's not as tough as he seems.
Exactly.
That everybody is afraid of something.
Right.
Right. So I liked some of the details that I liked from this one. They talk about going past, they have this tag at the beginning where Budnick is carving into a tree. Donkey Lips is filming him. Mm-hmm. And something about Ugg, I forget exactly, but I like that they have these, like, names for the places at their camp. It's past the big gray rock by the sacred tree. Yes. So he's like, why are you carving into the sacred tree? Yeah. Right? Like, and I didn't have that at the camps that I went to, but there's a Y camp near us, and they have names like that for all there's little signs, like, the Green Pavilion and the Big Gray Rock, and, like those kind of things.
We had that. We had the Lower Lean-Tos, we had Skull Field, we had Upper and Lower Lake, we had Banker 1, were different cabin areas.
Right.
We had things like that.
We had a bunch of family cabins that were all puns, like the We Blew In.
Oh gosh. Oh
things
boy.
like that. But I kind of liked that idea. I love that we only hear Dr. Khan on the loudspeaker and we never see him.
You never see him, yeah.
I think that's kind of funny. I also love that the kids have a choice. We had this at our academic camp. A lot of times they'd like tell you on the schedule, like, you can do A or B. They have a choice between ghost stories or bingo.
Yeah, and so everyone's at the ghost stories.
I just thought that was hilarious. I just think that's kind of funny.
And then they roll into the new introduction, which I feel bad for kind of William, who left, because they refilmed the whole introduction, almost shot for shot. Yeah. But the kid's a little older, and now they've replaced William with Mike in his lines and everything.
And they have, except that even what I said, what I put in my notes here was still off key. Like, they didn't try to change that up.
Yeah.
Which I just thought was kind of funny. In this episode, Budnick's a lot meaner, and it's hard to remember because we only saw 2, and then I did watch part of the first episode as well. I didn't have time for more than that this week. I was quite busy, but Budnick reminded me of Corey Feldman, and I don't know if he was kind of doing that on purpose, but he is, like, smart mouth, quick talk, like that kind of thing. In the other episode, because Ellen was the hellion, he tried to kind of commiserate with her as, like, the bad boy of the group. But here he's just really mean to people. Yeah. And he really is, as you said, kind of a bully.
He was supposed to be kind of the bully of the group, but I mean, to a point. Obviously, Nickelodeon or Disney or whatever are not going to have, like, a really mean bully.
Right.
But to a point, there was going to be some, be a bully. I think they tried to have sections, like in the first season, where he tried to relate to Ellen. First off, because she was a little bit of a bully.
Right.
But secondly, I mean, you don't want to have, in a kid's show, a character who's completely unrelatable. Mm-hmm. So he's got to have some kind of things that people can be like, okay, I don't hate him.
Yeah, some kind of redeemable.
It's bad enough he's a ginger already.
Stop. No. That's not nice. And I will say, too, that my memory of this is that as a kid, I read him as, like, the cool guy. As an adult, I'm like, he's a bully and he needs some discipline.
Yeah, well, that was the problem, is he was always they expected him to be the bully. And in the first season, William was supposed to be like the cool, likable guy, and he wasn't stand out enough.
Yeah, that's the thing.
So then they brought Mike in to try to be the cool guy.
But both of them, this is they don't have the magnetism that the kid who played Budnick has, like, I don't know if it's like star power, but I guess in this show.
That's the problem. Budnick was outstarring the other guys.
Yeah.
And so they had to do something different.
I feel like if they had left it on long enough that it would have become more like a Zach Morrison character where he's kind of mean to people, but he is like the cool guy that the girls like, and like the people watching, it's like aspirational.
It almost looked, with looks and everything, that was kind of where they were trying to go with Mike.
Yeah, but he
was like a young Zach Morris almost that they thought they were bringing in.
No offense to the actor, but it's like a saltine cracker versus like a s'more. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, there's just no flavor there. What did you think about the things they were afraid of? I thought that was kind of interesting. Mike's got this stuffed hippo.
Oh yeah, Mike has a stuffed hippo that he's brought to camp that is hidden. It's like his stuffed animal.
It's his comfort object.
Which is not unlike, I mean, for 11, 12 years old even into 13, there are a lot of people who still have stuffed animals on their bed and things like that, right? But they wouldn't bring it to school and show people. So he's afraid of people seeing his stuffed animal. And so, he's got this nightmare of everyone seeing it and things like that. And then Telly, the girl...
Wait, but then he wakes up and he throws it out.
Yeah, he does throw out the animal because he's afraid of people finding out.
And on the one hand, it's so sad, because like a kid should just be a kid. On the other hand, sometimes peer pressure is not the worst thing in the world.
Right.
And you don't really want your kid like going to college. I mean, I guess sometimes people do go to college and bring like a stuffed animal with them though, don't they?
Yeah, girls more so than guys.
But even then, it's more like to make it look more like home. It's not like because I have to sleep with this.
But at 12 or 13, he is not. That's not a ridiculously old age.
It really isn't.
Even for a boy to have a stuffed animal.
It's not. So yeah, Telly the girl is.
She's the sports girl.
This is my favorite part.
And so Zeke in her nightmare says, you just want to dream of balling.
She says...
Because she wants to do basketball.
He says, I'll grant your greatest wish. And she says, I want to play ball. And he takes her to
a formal ball and makes her dress like a princess, which is the worst thing. She's like afraid of being a prissy
like,
girl.
I don't want to be a prince. I just thought it was hysterically funny. Also, because legitimately, I had... almost that exact dress that she's wearing. She's wearing,
Of course you did.
Other girls or other women my age now, they might remember Laura Ashley. Laura Ashley were these dresses that had, like, floral patterns on them. And they looked like, something out of, like, almost the 1800s, but a little bit updated, but not by much.
It looked like your grandma's couch.
Kind of. Kind of, yeah. Yeah. I'll show you later a picture. If I can find it, I will post it on the blog. Okay. I'll post a picture of me on the blog along with the recipe. Or on Facebook maybe. So, they admit some of their fears to their friends. Budnick overhears, he makes fun of them, and then they have this interesting sequence where, again, it's all based on a prank.
Right.
They're gonna take him out to the woods, they're gonna prank him. Donkey Lips has a pumpkin head that he can't see out of.
Yeah.
They also have like a trap. So he's setting up traps because he knows that they're going to prank him.
Yeah, he's going to outsmart them. So he kind of sets up traps, but they plan on like pretending to be ghosts. One of them's going to pretend to be the actual Zeke, like dressed up as him. Right? They all have different options. And of course, he catches pretty much all of them in traps.
Yeah, but then we come to his downfall because his Achilles heel is spiders.
Yes.
So he runs into a big web. There's spiders and he's like, oh, help!
Yeah.
And then he has to admit that he's not that tough of a guy. My favorite part of this whole section, I thought that the donkey lips and the pumpkin head was kind of ridiculous, a little over the top. That's TV, right?
Right.
It was over the top, but I did think was funny that he set a trap and Ugg steps in it and is just hanging upside down.
Yes.
But they forget about him.
Yeah. Until Donkey Lips comes stumbling into him because he can't see in his
and then they both
head.
freak out.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a fun episode, and a fun couple of episodes that we watched. So Steve, how did other people feel about it? How was it received at the time?
So reception, Salute Your Shorts holds a 75% rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay,
which
that's
is pretty
good. That's fresh.
Entertainment Weekly at the time gave the series a B+, comparing it favorably to Meatballs, the movie.
Okay.
Along those lines. And so Lynn Hefferly of the Los Angeles Times described the premiere as a general celebration of crudelity, stupidity, and irreverence.
I agree.
Okay.
With that, I agree with that assessment.
Let's see, the AV Club praised the second season edition of Blake Soper as Pinsky, who I'm assuming is Mike.
Yes.
Arguing that while he was not a clear protagonist, like William was during the first season, his basically neutrality kind of strengthened the group.
Oh, okay.
Because he was kind of friends with the girls and with the guys, and he wasn't a bully, but he also wasn't, like, weak and in the background as much. Yeah, I get that. So, awards-wise, the show was nominated for Outstanding Young Ensemble Cast in a Television Series at the 13th Youth in Film Awards in 91. Danny Cooksey was nominated for Best Young Actor, starring in a cable series. I believe he played Butnick.
Yes.
And so he was nominated as Best Young Actor, starring in a cable series. Michael Bauer won Best Young Actor, co-starring.
And he played Donkey Lips. Mm-hmm.
Trevor Eister was nominated in the same category.
Oh, wow, okay.
He was the smart kid?
I think so. I think he played Sponge, yeah.
Okay. Heidi Lucas won Best Young Actress, co-starring in a cable series at the 14th Youth and Family Awards.
Okay.
Megan Berwick and Venus DeMilo were nominated in the same category.
Okay.
So Heidi Lucas played the nature girl.
Right.
And she won Best Actress. But both the other two girls were nominated in the same category.
Venus DeMilo played Telly, and then the other girl...
Megan Berwick.
Megan Berwick we didn't see as much, but she played, like, the wealthy girl.
She played, the prissy kind of girly
prissy,
girl.
Yeah.
Yep. The show was the second highest rated cable TV series with children 6 to 11 at the start of its second season in 92.
Nice.
Which is pretty impressive. Despite being in reruns for 4 years, the show finished as one of the 15 highest rated basic cable series of 96. So 4 years after being in reruns, it still was one of the 15 highest rated cable shows.
Well, that's the thing that I was saying. Like, I can still... I think my brother watched it longer than I did. But the thing is, you would like, be flipping around the TV and, like, randomly it would be on, and maybe you saw that episode or maybe you didn't.
Yeah.
You know?
And on June 7th, 2004, the show aired for the last time on Nickelodeon.
Wow. 2004.
2004. It aired as part of a program. It won the fan vote as part of the network's 25th anniversary You Pick Live programming.
Oh, okay.
So people could call in, or I doubt maybe email in 2004, but they could basically send in votes for the shows they wanted to see on this live event, and it won the fan pick.
Okay.
And it was shown for last time.
So how did we feel about it? This was your first kind of viewing. Why don't you go first? What are your overall impressions? What's your rating?
Well, we talked about some of the downsides. I mean, the camera work was a little amateur-y.
Yeah.
But I did feel that fed into this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's not my type of thing. I thought the show was good. We talked about both episodes. But I'm going to be honest, like, even back then, I didn't watch a lot of this kids kind of stuff. Because I'm more of a sci-fi person, or I was watching, like, mysteries or horror. It just wasn't my genre as much.
Well, it's in this weird space, and it's meant for, and when we do Saved by the Bell, that's why I keep comparing it, because it is a middle grade show.
Yeah.
It's meant for kids who have aged out of cartoons, but might not really be watching, like, the 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock sitcoms their parents are watching.
Yes.
Like, my mom was watching, like, Simon and Simon. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's not necessarily a show that, I guess that was probably before this, but just as an example, right?
So, I'm going to go with 7 Cabins.
Oh, wow, okay.
All right. I mean, it was good enough, and it was I think it was, I would let kids watch this. Even with, like, the fart stuff, it's a little irrelevant, but there's a lot worse now on TV.
Yeah.
So I would do that. I like the camp theme of it. I think the characters were okay, but, it wasn't anything crazy. And I think that about goes even, because, like, Rotten Tomatoes was 75, 7 out of 10 is about a C.
Yeah.
That's what I would give it.
All right. So I think there's a lot of points that I agree with you on. I think, it's interesting. The acting isn't always the strongest, but it is just supposed to be kind of normal kids, right?
Yeah.
The camera work we've talked about. These episodes, I will say too, I paused a couple times. They felt very long. And I will say that hearing from Steven Slavnik, it seems like that was deliberate. Like, a lot of kids' shows are like, quick cut, quick cut, quick cut.
Yes.
But this was, because it's at camp, it's like a lazy summer kind
that
of thing.
too.
But I guess maybe I don't have the patience for that.
I felt it too. I thought that these, were these half-hour shows?
They were half-hour, and they felt
like
like 45
minutes.
They
yes.
were really like 26. And it's the same thing with some of this older stuff. If you go like way back, and like if you watch like the Andy Griffith episode, now if you watch an episode of that, they're almost 30 because they didn't have as many commercials. They feel like they're an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Because the editing is quite different. And the story beats are different. The quickness of the dialogue, right? That kind of thing. I did think I like how they kind of play with the stereotypes. It's a little bit Breakfast Clubby, right? We're trying to go beyond just, who is the sports girl? Why is she afraid of being a press?
Yes.
Why is going to a ball her worst nightmare? The popular guy who for a 12-year-old is kind of a ladies' man, but he has a stuffed animal. Right? Those kind of things. I really enjoyed that. It was a nice throwback for me. Did it ruin my childhood? No. Do I think it holds up? I don't know. If we sat down, like, well, our nieces are probably about the right age for this.
Yeah.
If we sat them down, I think they'd get bored very quickly. But as you said, most kids aren't going to camp.
Yeah, they haven't been to camp, really.
They don't have, even for the kids who have been a week, like you and I think of it differently because we were there the whole summer as counselors. They don't have the same frame of reference, I don't think.
They don't have the connection either.
Like, when I was at camp, I ended up with like 8 pen pals, and a couple of them, like when I went to the academic camp, I wrote to them the entire year. Like, we wrote back and forth to each other for a year and then saw each other at camp again the next year.
Sweetie, you had pen pals?
Yeah.
Oh, sweetie.
We didn't have social media back then.
And you were at church camp and academic camp. Was your childhood filmed in front of a live studio audience?
No, it was just very lonely. But at academic camp, I felt like I was with other kids like me. Okay. And at church camp, again, as a person who, as a kid and even now, is very strong Christian, I don't want to, but that's how that I didn't have that in common with a lot of people, like, in my school.
Right.
So when I went to church camp, that was a place where I could, like, openly worship and talk about my faith and think about things like that. So yeah, I formed really strong relationships there that I didn't find as much with. When you're at school, you're just put into a classroom with people your same age who live in your same area of the country.
Right.
Right? When you go to a sports camp, an academic camp, a fun Boy Scouts camp, there's common interest. So I think that that's one of the reasons. The people that I worked with at camp, some of them are still my Facebook friends, and I haven't seen them in, 30 years, but there's that commonality there. Anyway. So, yeah.
So what's your rating?
In some ways it holds up, in some ways it doesn't. I'm going to go with the same one as you on this. I'm going to go with a 7.
Okay.
A fun show, a good show, great memories. It's a good revisit. you know, would I go back and watch all 26 episodes? Probably not.
No.
Might I later? Don't think I could. Like, you know, that's a little too slow.
They're too slow for me. Yeah, it's a little too slow,
but for what it is, for the audience, it is. I think it's good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. 7 cabins out of 10.
7 out of 10 cabins for Salute Your Shorts. And we have 2 things coming up. And we don't have the segment, What is Steve Willing to Watch?
Oh, thank you.
And I'll tell you why. Because our next summer movie, our last summer movie, really. Oh, that's sad. The summer's ending. Our last summer movie, also camp themed, is Camp Nowhere, and that is coming next week.
Yep.
We also have a bonus episode. We had a fan request from Sarah, who said, please do Double Dare. Remember that show? ? And I was like, I do remember that show.
We do remember that show, Sarah.
Normally I would have Steve maybe pick a couple episodes. They're very much the same.
It was a game show.
Because it's a game show, but also I could only find a few episodes of it. So we're going to watch a couple of the ones that are available.
Sounds good.
So that is what is coming up. Please remember to rate and leave comments, especially on our Facebook. We do have some room for bonus episodes here and there. And we do want to know what you think. And I just want to say thanks to everybody. I don't want to say exact numbers because these come out later, but we had kind of a goal for where we wanted to be in terms of downloads and number of listeners and subscribers by this point in the summer. And we're way beyond.
Yeah, we really are.
So we have almost 500 subscribers right now. We just wanted to give you guys a shout out and say thanks. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show. Bye.
Bye.
This podcast is supported by its creators
and listeners like you.
Help keep our show ad-free by visiting our website, stopruiningmychildhood.com.
There you can find links to our social media.
And this very podcast you're currently listening to.
Both Megan and I are authors, and you can find links to our books on our About page.
And on our Watch With Us page, you can find videos and links for all the shows and movies we discuss on the podcast.
And more importantly, links to buy the nostalgic snacks we review as well.
We also post bonus content about once a month.
So like, subscribe, and follow.
For a small independent podcast like ours, it really does make a difference. Thanks.